There are illnesses that come and go, shadows that touch humanity for a brief moment and then fade. But then there are enemies older than memory, older than cities, older than every story written in stone. Malaria is one of these. It has traveled beside us like a ghost, drifting through generations, crossing rivers and deserts, slipping into the breath of night for thousands of years, before we even understood what blood carried within it, or what. The buzzing of a small insect could mean malaria shaped the fate of kingdoms, determined the course of wars, and left its trace in the silence of abandoned villages. And yet, though it is one of the most relentless foes our species has ever faced, its story is not only one of suffering. It is also a story of resilience, adaptation, and the strange intimacy between humans and the microscopic world that shapes our lives in ways unseen. As you rest here tonight, we will drift through time and science, moving as gently as the tide. We will visit the still waters where the mosquito lays its eggs, follow the parasite on its invisible journey through the human body, and listen to the echoes of history where malaria altered the destiny of entire civilizations. This is not a story of fear. It is a story of understanding, and with each breath, with each calm word, you will not only learn about malaria, you will feel the rhythm of life itself, ancient and unbroken. Before we begin, I invite you to make yourself comfortable. Let your body settle into rest, and your breath soften like the evening air. If you find this journey soothing, I would love for you to gently tap the like button. Share this with someone who enjoys learning before sleep, and subscribe so you don't miss the next night's story. In the comments, tell me where in the world you're listening from. Malaria is a global story. It has touched every continent, and in its telling, we are reminded how deeply connected we all are. This will be a calm, healing journey through science and history. No urgency, no harshness, only truth spoken softly, like the steady hum of the night. Let's begin to talk about malaria, humanity's oldest enemy. Chapter 1. The silent swamps where it began. The night is heavy with stillness. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a quiet swamp, the air thick with moisture, the water dark and unmoving, reflecting fragments of a pale moon. The silence is deep but not empty. It carries the soft hum of insects, the delicate ripple of life too small to notice, the faint stirrings of wings brushing against the invisible fabric of air. It is in such place, is silent, timeless, and deceptively calm that one of humanity's oldest companions began its journey. Not a predator with fangs or claws, not a beast that roared in the forest or charged in the open plains, but something so small it could slip through the folds of night without ever being seen. The swamp has always been a paradox. On the surface, it seems a place of stagnation, a realm of still waters and quiet shadows. But beneath that stillness, life teems. In the dark water, larvae wriggle, invisible to the eye. On the surface, delicate patterns shimmer where insects land for only a moment. In the humid air above, a symphony of wings hums endlessly, as though the night itself is alive with breath. Here, the story of malaria begins not with humans, not even with the parasites themselves, but with the ancient landscapes that gave them room to exist. Swamps, marshes, and wetlands have always been the cradles of this tale. These places, rich in life, yet slow in their rhythms, created the perfect haven for mosquitoes. And it was through the mosquito, delicate and fragile, that the parasite found its eternal vessel. Pause here, breathe slowly. Imagine the warm dampness of the air, the soft chorus of unseen insects, the calm reflections of starlight on water that never flows. Every detail matters, because malaria's story is not only a tale of disease, it is a story written into landscapes, climates, and rhythms of the earth. Long before humans built villages, long before cities rose beside rivers, even before language carved itself into our throats, the parasite that would one day torment humanity was already learning its quiet dance with life. Scientists believe malaria is ancient, tens of millions of years old. Fossilized mosquitoes, trapped in amber, show that their kind has been biting vertebrates for far longer than we have existed. The parasite, too, has evolutionary roots stretching back into the deep history of life. Some strains may have infected dinosaurs, carried in the delicate bodies of insects fluttering in prehistoric forests. Picture that. Great reptiles walking through fern-filled jungles, their massive sides twitching at the touch of small, buzzing creatures. Even then, the microscopic shadows of malaria may have moved silently through bloodstreams. Long before humans arrived to feel its bite, when humanity finally stepped onto the stage of history, malaria was already waiting. The swamps and rivers that nourished our crops, the wetlands where life thrived most abundantly, were also the places where mosquitoes flourished. And where mosquitoes flourished, the parasite found its home. The mosquito itself is an unlikely villain. It weighs almost nothing, its body delicate, its wings so thin they seem woven from moonlight. To watch one hover in the air is to watch a miracle of nature. Precision, elegance, and persistence in miniature form. But nature is not shaped by appearances, is shaped by relationships. And the relationship between mosquito, parasite, and human became one of the most enduring stories of survival and struggle in history. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine standing in that ancient swamp. Imagine the air pressing softly against your skin, the quiet hum of wings, the faint sting of a single bite. That tiny prick, almost nothing, became the threshold through which malaria would step into the human story. Through that bite, the parasite passed silently into blood, beginning a journey that would echo across time. The name malaria comes from the Italian mala aria, meaning bad air. For centuries, people believed the disease rose from the foul vapors of swamps and marshes, the heavy breath of still waters carrying sickness into lungs. They were not entirely wrong. The swamps were, indeed, the cradle, but not because of poisonous air. The truth was subtler. The swamps were where mosquitoes bred, where stagnant water provided the nursery for wings that carried an invisible enemy. The story of malaria is, in a way, a story of misunderstanding. For so long, humanity tried to explain the fevers, the chills, the relentless waves of illness. We looked at the landscape, at the waters, at the stars even, searching for reasons. We did not know that the enemy was smaller than sight, hiding within the fragile body of an insect. But pause again. Feel how gentle this story is, despite its weight. Because even within malaria's long presence in human life, there is no malice. The mosquito does not bite to kill. It bites to live, to draw nourishment so it may lay its eggs in the safety of water. The parasite does not exist to destroy. It exists to continue, to move from one host to another in the endless cycle of survival. It is not cruelty, it is nature's rhythm, impartial and endless. The swamp at night holds all of this within its silence. The still waters reflect not only the stars, but the invisible lines of connection between species. Every mosquito rising from the water, every parasite hidden in its veins, every human breath drawn in the damp night air, all are threads in a vast tapestry, woven slowly over millennia. Consider how deeply this story has shaped us. Malaria is not a recent visitor. It has been with us so long that it is written into our very biology. In certain parts of the world, humans developed genetic adaptations, sickle cell traits, and others that reflect a deep, ongoing negotiation with this parasite. Our bodies carry the memory of swamps we may never have seen, the silent nights of ancestors who endured fevers and chills beneath unfamiliar skies. And yet, the beginning of this story is not tragic. It is simply part of life's ancient symmetry. Where water stood still, mosquitoes thrived. Where mosquitoes thrived, malaria followed. And where malaria followed, humanity was forced to learn resilience. Imagine centuries passing like slow waves. Picture ancient villages on riverbanks, huts built near fertile wetlands where crops grew tall, children running barefoot near the water's edge, women drawing buckets of water at dusk, men resting after long hours of tending the fields, and, in the soft darkness, mosquitoes rising, their wings whispering in the air. Each bite, unnoticed at first, carrying with it the possibility of fever. Each breath of night becoming a shared story between humans and the unseen world. Malaria shaped migration, settlement, and survival. Some regions became notorious for their fevers. Travelers feared the mists of certain valleys, the heaviness of certain riverlands. Entire landscapes gained reputations, whispered about in stories. Lands where the air itself was heavy with illness, where strangers could not linger. And yet, people stayed. They stayed because swamps and river valleys were also rich with life-fertile soil, abundant fish, fresh water, the same waters that nourished gave shelter to the disease. Life and danger entwined, inseparable. And so, malaria became a quiet companion, not always visible, not always present, but always near. A rhythm of fevers, chills, and recoveries that moved through families and generations. A pattern that became part of existence itself. As we linger in this beginning, feel how the swamp holds the paradox of malaria's story. Stillness and movement. Life and danger, fragility and endurance. The mosquito hovers, delicate and ephemeral, yet through it moves a parasite that can alter the course of history. The waters seem lifeless, yet they carry the seeds of transformation. The silence feels eternal, yet within it hums the endless cycle of wings and blood. Take a slow breath. Imagine the air, heavy with warmth, filled with the faint shimmer of countless tiny lives. This is where it began. Not with violence, not with sudden catastrophe, but with a slow unfolding, as natural as the rising of the moon. The swamp does not rush. The mosquito does not hurry. The parasite does not fear. All move in their rhythm, a rhythm humanity would learn to recognize, resist, and endure. This is the first chapter of malaria's story. Not a story of war, but a story of coexistence. Painful, but enduring. It is the story of how a tiny parasite carried on the delicate wings of a mosquito, found a place in the vast landscape of human life. And tonight, as you rest, you may feel a kind of kinship with those who lived before us, those who listened to the hum of night, who breathed the damp air of swamps, who endured fevers without understanding why. Their story flows into ours, just as the waters of the swamp flow slowly, endlessly, into rivers, into seas, into the great cycle of life. The silence of the swamp is not emptiness. It is memory. It is the beginning of one of the oldest stories humanity has ever known. Chapter 2. the parasite's hidden dance. The night deepens, and with it, the story turns inward away from the swamps and rivers where mosquitoes rise, and into the hidden, silent worlds that unfold with every heartbeat. If the swamp was the stage, then the parasite itself is the dancer, moving unseen through blood and body with steps as old as time. Imagine, for a moment, the moment of a bite. A mosquito lands softly on the skin, delicate, almost imperceptible. Its wings tremble. With the last echo of flight, its tiny body poised, with a precision honed over millions of years. Its slender proboscis pierces the skin, searching for the quiet river of blood beneath. For the mosquito, this is nourishment, the meal that will allow her to lay her eggs in the still waters of the swamp. But hidden within her saliva is something far older, far more secretive. The parasite known as Plasmodium. The parasite is smaller than sight, invisible to the naked eye. Yet within its tiny form lies a complex choreography, a life cycle that moves between mosquito and human like a ritual, repeated endlessly, with no beginning and no end. To call it a parasite is true, but it is also a traveler, a shapeshifter, a silent dancer that knows how to slip from one world to another without being noticed. When the mosquito draws blood, she releases a droplet of her own saliva. In that instant, the parasite enters, a quiet intrusion, unnoticed, unfelt. These forms of the parasite, called sporozoites, are slender, crescent-shaped, designed for motion. They rush into the bloodstream, not to linger, but to find their way to the liver. It is in the liver that the first dance begins. Picture the human body as a vast, glowing city, every organ a district alive with its own rhythm. The bloodstream is the river of light that connects them. The parasite entering this city does not wander aimlessly. It moves with direction, as if guided by memory, until it reaches the liver, that great guardian of the body's balance. And here, in the quiet chambers of liver cells, the parasite begins its hidden work. For days, sometimes weeks, it multiplies silently. Each sporozoite slips into a liver cell, becoming invisible to the immune system's watchful eyes. It grows, divides, becomes thousands of new forms. No fever, no chills, no sign alerts the human host. The parasite waits, multiplying in the shadows, until the moment comes to release its next form into the blood. And so begins the second dance, the invasion of red blood cells. The red blood cell is itself a miracle. Simple in form, it carries oxygen, the breath of life, to every corner of the body. A soft, round disc, flexible enough to slip through the tiniest vessels. It moves tirelessly, carrying life with each pulse of the heart. Into this simple, tireless vessel, the parasite enters. It is here that malaria's most famous rhythm emerges, the cycle of invasion, growth, and destruction that gives rise to the fevers and chills humanity has known for millennia. Inside the red blood cell, the parasite feeds on hemoglobin, the protein that gives blood its deep red color. It grows, changes, and divides, transforming from a ring-like form into something larger, more complex, until finally it bursts forth, destroying its host cell and flooding into the bloodstream to invade new ones. This cycle repeats every 2 or 3 days, depending on the species of Plasmodium. And with each cycle, the human body feels the echo, waves of fever, chills, and exhaustion, timed to the parasite's rhythm. It is a dance written into the body itself. The fever rises as the parasites break free, the immune system flaring in response. The fever falls as the cycle resets, only to rise again when the next wave erupts. To the person enduring it, it feels like madness, days of sudden heat and shaking, followed by brief reprieves of calm, only for the cycle to return. But beneath that suffering lies a perfect biological choreography, precise and ancient, as if the parasite were keeping time with a drumbeat only it can hear. Pause, hear, and breathe. Imagine this rhythm not as chaos, but as a pattern the parasite's hidden dance, as intricate as any music, as inevitable as the phases of the moon. There are different dancers in this story. Plasmodium falciparum, the most deadly, moves with ruthless speed, overwhelming the body with its rapid cycles. Plasmodium vivax and Plasmodium ovale have a slower rhythm, able to hide in the liver for months or even years before returning. Plasmodium Malaria moves with an even gentler pace, its cycle stretching longer, but persistent, sometimes lasting decades within a human host. Each species is a different melody, a different rhythm of suffering and survival. But what is most extraordinary is the elegance with which the parasite transforms itself at every stage. From sporozoite to liver form, from blood stage to sexual stage, it changes shape like a dancer shifting costumes, adapting to each new environment. When the parasite senses that it may soon be taken up by another mosquito, it transforms again, creating male and female gemetocytes, the seeds of its future. When the mosquito takes its next blood meal, these gemetocytes meet inside the insect's gut, fusing, dividing, and beginning the cycle anew. It is here, within the mosquito once again, that the parasite completes its circle. From the gut, it moves to the salivary glands, ready to be passed on with the next bite. And so the dance repeats, human to mosquito, mosquito to human, an endless chain of invisible motion stretching across centuries. This hidden choreography has shaped more of human history than most of us can imagine. Armies halted, settlements abandoned, lives shortened, all because of a parasite that dances silently through blood. But for now, let us stay close to the science itself and listen carefully to the beauty within its movements. The parasite's ability to transform is not random. It is precise, coded into its DNA like a script rehearsed over millions of years. Each stage has its own tools, its own design for survival. The sporozoite moves swiftly, shaped for motion through the bloodstream. The liver stage hides, cloaked. From the immune system, the blood stage multiplies explosively, feeding on the very essence of life. And the sexual stage waits, patient, knowing its true destiny lies not in the human, but in the mosquito. Think of it this way: the human is not the parasite's true home. We are the stage, the host, the temporary shelter. The mosquito is both, gateway and partner, the one without which the parasite cannot complete its story. It is a triangular relationship, parasite-mosquito, human bound together in a rhythm that has lasted longer than civilizations. And within this rhythm, there is an eerie kind of balance. The parasite does not always kill. If it killed too quickly, it would lose its chance to spread. Instead, it lingers, it weakens, it torments, but often it allows the host to survive long enough to be bitten again, to continue the cycle. Death is not its purpose. Continuation is. Survival is. Movement is. Pause again. Breathe deeply. Feel the slow, hypnotic rhythm of this cycle. The parasite moves like a shadow, but it is not malicious. It is simply living, as we are, carried by the same laws of nature. the same drive to continue, and yet the cost for humanity has been immense. Entire populations have felt this rhythm echo through their bodies, generation after generation. Malaria has shaped human genes, sculpted our immune systems, and left its mark on our very blood. The sickle cell trait, for example, is a direct result of this dance. Those who carry one copy of the gene are less likely to die from malaria, because the parasite cannot thrive as easily within their altered red blood cells. But those who inherit two copies live with sickle cell disease, a heavy burden in exchange for resistance. It is a stark reminder that nature does not grant gifts freely. Every adaptation is a compromise, every survival a trade. The parasite's hidden dance is not confined to the body. It is reflected in culture, in history, in myth. Fever gods, swamp spirits, demons of the night, all of these echoes may trace back to malaria's relentless rhythm. Human imagination, struggling to explain the unexplainable, gave shape to the invisible dancer long before science revealed its name. And now, as you rest, consider how extraordinary it is that something so small can shape something so vast. A parasite invisible to the naked eye has altered the course of human destiny. A cycle carried out in silence, in darkness, in blood and breath, has echoed through empires and centuries. The swamp was the beginning, the stage, but the parasite's dance is the story itself. Hidden, complex, delicate, precise. A choreography no human could invent, but one we have been forced to learn, to endure, to resist. Close your eyes again. Imagine the bloodstream not as a battlefield, but as a ballroom lit softly from within. The red blood cells move like dancers themselves, swirling, carrying oxygen like lanterns. And into this ballroom steps the parasite, graceful, subtle, moving with a rhythm older than memory. It enters, it changes, it multiplies, it exits, and the music continues. To us, it brings fever and suffering. To itself, it is simply the dance of survival. This is the hidden dance of malaria, the delicate, tireless choreography of plasmodium written into our blood, carried by wings of night, repeated endlessly across the ages. A dance we did not choose, but one that binds us still. And as the night deepens, we drift with it, breathing slowly, listening quietly, as the invisible dancer continues its steps in the silence of the human story. Chapter 3. Whispers through civilizations. The parasite's hidden dance does not end in the body alone. It extends outward, rippling through families, villages, empires, and the quiet turning of history itself. Malaria has always been more than an illness. It has been a whisper in the background of civilization, an invisible hand shaping where we built our homes, how we waged our wars, and even how we understood the nature of life and death. If you listen carefully, you can almost hear it, not in the loud proclamations of kings or the grand monuments of stone, but in the soft absences, the unfinished works, the roads not taken. Malaria's story is woven not into triumph, but into the shadows that followed humanity across centuries. Imagine again the ancient swamps, but now picture them beside the earliest villages, the Fertile Crescent, the Nile Delta, the valleys of Mesopotamia, places where water and soil gave rise to farming, to community, to civilization itself. Yet these fertile places were also breeding grounds for mosquitoes. And with the mosquitoes came malaria, quietly pressing against the first cities of humankind. The people of those lands knew fever intimately. They gave it names, prayed to gods, for relief, wrapped it in myth and ritual. The ancient Egyptians recorded fevers in medical papyri, though they did not yet know their cause. In their art and stories, you sense an awareness of invisible forces, spirits of the swamp, curses of the night that carried sickness into homes. The Nile, source of life and abundance, was also a source of still waters where mosquitoes thrived. Life and suffering were born from the same river. The Greeks, too, felt malaria's presence. In the writings of Hippocrates, the father of medicine, we find some of the earliest careful descriptions of fevers that came in cycles quotidian, tertian, quarter named for their rhythmic recurrence. Though he could not see the parasite, he recognized its pattern, its dance written into human suffering. Hippocrates taught that the environment shaped health, that certain places carried certain dangers, and he was right. Marshlands and swamps were marked as places of fever, avoided when possible, endured when necessary. The Romans took this knowledge with them as they built their empire. Their engineers drained swamps, built aqueducts, sought to master water itself, and yet malaria remained. In fact, some historians believe malaria played a role in the weakening of Rome. The city was surrounded by marshlands, and travelers often wrote of the fevers that haunted the low-lying areas. Armies camped in these regions sometimes fell to sickness before they ever faced battle. The legions, disciplined and mighty, could not march against an enemy so small it was unseen. Pause here and feel the strangeness of it. Empires rose and fell, stone monuments weathered centuries, languages and laws spread across continent sand through it all. A parasite moved silently, shaping outcomes in ways that generals and emperors never fully grasped. Malaria was not written into the official histories, but it whispered through them nonetheless. Consider Alexander the Great. His empire stretched from Greece to India, reshaping the known world. But at only 32 years old, he died suddenly in Babylon. After a brief illness marked by fever and weakness, historians debate the cause, but many suspect malaria. If true, then one of history's greatest conquerors was brought down not by armies, but by the delicate bite of a mosquito. A whisper, in the blood that changed the course of the world, the story echoes elsewhere. In the great Mediterranean, sailors and traders carried both goods and parasites. In the rice paddies of Asia, mosquitoes thrived beside human labor. In Africa, where malaria has been most enduring, entire cultures evolved in its shadow. The sickle cell trait, born from generations of survival, is not just a genetic adaptation, it is a record of history, written into the body itself. Even religion carries faint traces of malaria's hand. Some scholars suggest that the biblical plagues of Egypt may have included malaria, woven into the suffering of a people in a land of swamps and rivers. Ancient Hindu texts describe fevers that align with malaria's cycles. Everywhere humanity looked, where water and warmth met, the whisper followed. Pause and breathe again. Imagine civilizations not only as stone and story, but as bodies, fragile, vulnerable, enduring. Just as the parasite moved through blood, so too did it move through the lifeblood of empires, quietly, rhythmically, without spectacle. The Middle Ages carried the whisper forward. In Europe, malaria was known as ague, the marsh fever. Villages near wetlands lived with its presence as a fact of life. In England, the fens were notorious for their fevers. In Italy, the Pontine marshes outside Rome were dreaded for their bad air, their mala aurea. Pilgrims, peasants, and kings alike feared these places, and yet life persisted around them, because fertile land was too precious to abandon. Again, the paradox: the waters that gave life also carried danger. As trade expanded, malaria traveled. It moved with ships across the Mediterranean, into northern Europe, into the Americas. Colonists arriving in the New World found not only new lands, but new fevers, some brought by them, some already present in the environment. In the deep south of the United States, plantations beside rivers became centers of both wealth and illness. Malaria shaped labor, agriculture, and survival. But let us step gently here. This is not a tale of violence tonight, but of quiet influence. Imagine, instead, the rhythm of time, centuries unfolding, the whisper of fever passing from one generation to the next. Imagine a family living in a marshland village, their lives measured not only by the seasons of harvest, but by the cycles of fever. Imagine a child shivering with chills, a mother whispering prayers, a father gazing at the swamp with both gratitude and dread. This was life for countless millions. A life lived in the balance between nourishment and danger. Malaria also shaped where humans dared to build. Certain valleys remained uninhabited, not because of poor soil, but because of the fevers. Settlements were abandoned or never attempted in low marshes. Cities rose instead on higher ground, on hills and mountains, where the air was clearer, the mosquitoes fewer. Geography was destiny, guided not only by rivers and trade routes, but by the unseen presence of parasites. And in all of this, malaria remained silent. It did not roar through history like wars or conquests. It whispered, a steady, persistent rhythm, like a background hum. You see its presence not in the monuments of stone, but in the spaces between them, in the roads not built, in the campaigns cut short, in the children who never grew to adulthood. The Renaissance brought new ways of thinking, but even then, malaria lingered. Physicians debated its cause, still bound to the theory of miasma-bad air rising from swamps. They knew the pattern, but not the dancer. The parasite remained invisible, its presence suspected but unnamed. Remedies were sought in herbs, rituals, prayers. In South America, the bark of the cinchona tree was discovered by indigenous peoples to relieve fevers. This bark, containing quinine, became one of the most important tools in humanity's long struggle with malaria. It would be carried across oceans, treasured by explorers and colonists, woven into the fabric of medicine. But for now, in this chapter, the whisper continues. The age of exploration carried malaria farther still. Ships crossed the Atlantic, carrying not only people and goods, but mosquitoes and parasites. Malaria became entrenched in the Americas, shaping economies, labor systems, and even wars. It was there in the rice fields of South Carolina, in the swamps of the Amazon, in the river valleys of the Caribbean. The story of colonization cannot be told without malaria's quiet influence. Pause. Again, and breathe. Picture history not as a march of armies, but as a flow of rivers. And in those rivers, always, are the faint ripples of malaria, altering the course of the current in ways subtle but profound. Even the most powerful leaders could not escape it. In 1623, during the election of a new pope, many cardinals fell. Ill with fever in Rome, several died. The cause was malaria, rising from the Pontine marshes. Even the papacy, that great seat of spiritual power, was not beyond the reach of the whisper. Napoleon's army, too, felt its hand. During his campaign in Italy, his troops were struck by malaria. Later, in the Haitian Revolution, French forces lost tens of thousands not to battle, but to disease, yellow fever and malaria together shaping the outcome of history. Haiti's independence, one of the most extraordinary revolutions of the era, was aided in part by the mosquito and the parasite. It carried. Here is the strangeness of history. The mightiest armies can be undone by what cannot be seen. The parasite does not choose sides, does not carry intentions. It moves simply where life allows it, and in doing so, alters the destinies of nations, and so, malaria's whispers echo across civilizations, from the pharaohs of Egypt to the emperors of Rome, from medieval peasants to colonial settlers, from the halls of popes to the tents of armies. The story repeats. Fever, chill, exhaustion, recovery for some, death for others. Always the rhythm, always the whisper, carried forward by wings too small to notice. Tonight, as you drift further into rest, let yourself feel the vastness of this history. You are lying here now, in the quiet of your room, but your body carries the echoes of ancestors who endured these fevers, who whispered prayers in the night, who lived and died with malaria as part of their world. Their resilience flows in you. Their survival allowed you to be here. Civilizations rose and fell, but humanity endured. We adapted, resisted, and learned. The whisper did not silence us. It shaped us, and in that shaping lies a strange, quiet beauty, the reminder that even in the face of ancient enemies, life continues, resilient and unbroken. Malaria's whispers are still with us today, but their echoes through civilizations remind us of a deeper truth, that history is not only built on conquest and invention, but also on endurance, on the quiet strength of millions whose names were never written, but whose lives carried forward the rhythm of humanity. The whispers of malaria are the whispers of life itself, fragile, persistent, and eternal. Chapter 4. The human body's battle of light and shadow. The story of the parasite was never only about the swamp, nor the mosquito, nor the civilizations that rose and fell in its shadow. At its heart, it was also about the human body itself. For inside the fragile walls of flesh and blood, a war unlike any other unfolded. A war fought not with swords and shields, but with cells, signals, and shadows of survival. It was here, in the hidden realm beneath the skin, that the parasite found both its fiercest enemy and its most generous host. When a mosquito pressed its needle-fine proboscis into human flesh, it was not merely hunger that drove the bite. With it came an offering, or perhaps an invasion. Invisible droplets, laced with parasitic passengers, slipped beneath the surface, entering a body that had not consented but was now drafted into battle. The skin prickled, the blood vessels widened, and almost instantly, alarm bells rang through the body's defenses. The immune system was ancient too, sculpted by countless ages of evolutionary necessity. White blood cells patrolled like watchmen, scanning for intruders, ready to swarm. But the parasite was older still and cunning. It did not arrive shouting its presence. It arrived whispering, cloaked in chemical disguises, wearing masks that blurred the lines between self and other. The first stage of the battle unfolded in silence. Within the bloodstream, tiny invaders slipped like ghosts into red blood cells, those glowing sacs that carried life-giving oxygen. Safe within their crimson chambers, the parasites multiplied, dividing and swelling until they burst their fragile hosts from within. And when they did, the body's alarm grew louder. Fevers spiked, chills raked through bones, sweat poured as if to cleanse the infection. Yet even then, the cycle continued, relentless. Each fever was more than a symptom. It was fire, a desperate attempt by the body to burn away its shadow. Heat was one of the oldest weapons, forged in the primeval crucible of survival. The rise in temperature slowed the parasite, strained its fragile machinery, and summoned immune forces to the battlefield. But the parasite endured, adapting, biding its time, weaving itself deeper into the cycles of blood. The war inside was not one-sided. The body was clever, but the parasite was sly. When white blood cells closed in, guided by chemical sense of danger, the parasite altered its surface, changing its molecular clothes so quickly the immune army faltered. It was like fighting an enemy that constantly shifted shape, never appearing the same way twice. The body learned to recognize one mask, only to be confounded by another. And so, the conflict became a dance of light and shadow, the immune system pushing, the parasite slipping away, the body heating, the parasite enduring, the blood surging, the parasite multiplying. To the human host, it felt like a storm, shivers that shook the bones, exhaustion that hollowed the muscles, visions born from fever dreams. Yet within that storm was the choreography of survival, one life fighting not to be consumed by another. Historians wrote of battles fought with armies and kings, but the truest wars were waged unseen, in capillaries and organs, in marrow and spleen. There were no banners here, only signals, cytokines spreading messages like smoke signals, summoning allies from deep reservoirs of defense. Macrophages engulfed what they could, natural killer cells struck at shadows, and T-cells remembered, storing the memory of the invader for the next encounter. Memory was the immune system's greatest weapon, but memory was also what the parasite learned to outwit. In the marrow of bones, new red cells were born, unknowing of the danger that awaited them. They floated outward, bright and unscarred, only to be pierced by the invader. Inside the brain, blood vessels swelled and strained, as parasites clogged the flow, turning thought into haze and clarity into confusion. In the liver, hidden stages of the parasite lingered like ghosts, waiting for their moment to awaken again. And yet, even as the body trembled, it fought on with a persistence that mirrored the swamp itself. For life, whether parasite or human, was stubborn in its will to endure. One fever passed into another, each wave a test, each recovery a fragile victory. Some survived, scarred, yes, but stronger. Others fell, their bodies unable to withstand the weight of the shadow. Entire families, villages, and nations knew this battle intimately, though they did not see it unfold beneath the skin. They only knew the outcome: weakness, loss, survival, or death. But to call this struggle merely a war would be to miss the truth. It was also a strange kind of dialogue. The parasite needed the human body not only as battlefield, but as shelter. Without the host, it could not exist. And the body, in turn, was shaped by the presence of the parasite. Over generations, genes shifted, adapting, evolving, reshaping blood itself to resist the invader. The sickle-shaped cells that once seemed only a flaw were, in truth, a testament to this long entanglement, twisted red blood cells that resisted the parasite's grip, even as they brought their own pain to those who bore them. This was the paradox. Suffering gave rise to survival. Pain was the shadow that carried light within it. The body, in its endless resilience, found ways to bend but not break, to carry the mark of the parasite, yet still persist. In this way, the war inside was also a kind of partnership, one that neither side fully chose. yet both became bound to across centuries. As medicine emerged, humans began to glimpse the war more clearly. Microscopes revealed the crimson battlefield, the ruptured cells, the writhing invaders. At last, the invisible was made visible, and knowledge became a new kind of weapon. Quinine, drawn from the bark of trees, brought relief, a bitter drink that quieted the parasite's dance within. The blood. Later came other tools, chemical and precise, each one a candle of light against the shadow. But even then, the parasite shifted, twisted, learned, and resisted. It was never vanquished, only challenged. And so the story continued, not as a tale of defeat or victory, but of balance. The body remained both sanctuary and battlefield, carrying within it the memory of struggle. Each fever, each shiver, each drop of sweat was part of a greater rhythm, one that echoed through generations. For the parasite's shadow was not only in the blood, it was in the history of humanity itself, shaping migrations, settlements, even the rise and fall of empires. When one looks at the body, one might see only the surface, skin, eyes, breath. But beneath lies a theatre where every moment life and death entwine. Cells speak in whispers, invaders move in silence, and the body burns with both light and shadow. This is where the true battle unfolds, unseen but unending, each life carrying within it the echoes of a war older than memory. And so, the human body is not just a vessel, it is a battlefield, a storyteller, a monument to survival. In its veins runs not only blood, but the history of struggle, adaptation, and resilience. To live is to fight, not always with violence, but with persistence, with endurance, with the quiet strength of cells that rise again and again, no matter how many times they fall. The parasite may whisper, but the body answers. And in that dialogue of survival, the story of light and shadow continues, written not in ink or stone, but in the endless resilience of life itself. Chapter 5. The Long Road Toward Healing. Healing is not a straight line. It does not move with the elegance of a river flowing toward the sea, nor with the neat precision of a clock striking each passing hour. Healing stumbles. It wanders. It forgets its own direction, then remembers again. It pauses in the shadow of doubt, only to lurch forward when least expected. And when it comes to the long entanglement of humankind with malaria, healing has been nothing short of a road paved with trial, discovery, sacrifice, and resilience. To walk this road is to walk alongside countless generations who carried within their blood the hidden wars of parasite and cell. It is to walk among the healers who crushed bark into bitter brews, the scientists who bent over microscopes until their eyes blurred, the explorers who died far from home with fevered bodies, trembling, and the communities that endured losses yet continued to rebuild. Healing is not only the absence of illness, it is the quiet persistence of life, even in the shadow of it, the first steps out of darkness, long before medicine became an institution, before laboratories glowed with sterile light, before governments mobilized armies of doctors and epidemiologists. Healing began in the simplest of ways. It began in the hands of those who cared. The mothers who pressed cool cloths against burning foreheads, the elders who whispered prayers over the restless bodies of children, the villagers who shared food and herbs when one family had none left. For centuries, malaria was known simply as the intermittent fever, its cyclical pattern of chills, heat, and sweats marking its victims like the toll of a bell. Communities did not need microscopes to see its devastating rhythm. They knew the look in someone's eyes when the shivering began. They knew how the body sagged with exhaustion afterward. Healing, in those early steps, was never about eradication. It was about endurance. It was about surviving until the next day, the next harvest, the next generation. Yet among these fragile acts of care, knowledge was forming. In the forests of South America, the bark of the cinchona tree offered an unexpected gift. Indigenous peoples knew that steeping this bark in water produced a bitter drink that could reduce the torment of fever. To taste it was to endure its sharp, earthy bitterness, but for many, it was the taste of survival. Jesuit missionaries later carried this secret across oceans, introducing it to Europe, where it became known as Jesuit's bark or Peruvian bark. From this discovery, the road toward healing took its first real step into something larger than survival. For the first time, humanity had not just endurance, but a weapon. Cinchona bark, and later its purified alkaloid quinine, became the backbone of malaria treatment for centuries. Though far from perfect, it shifted the balance ever so slightly. The parasite was no longer invincible. The dawn of understanding, healing cannot proceed without understanding. For centuries, the cause of malaria was cloaked in mystery. Was it bad air, as the Italian word malaria suggested? Was it poisonous mists rising from swamps? Was it divine punishment, or the restless spirits of the dead? The road bent toward clarity in the late 19th century. In 1880, Charles Louis Alphonse Laveran, a French army doctor stationed in Algeria, peered into his microscope and saw something astonishing within the blood of a feverish soldier. Tiny organisms, alive, wriggling, not ghosts, not vapors, but parasites. For the first time, malaria was given a visible enemy. A few years later, Ronald Ross, a British physician working in India, uncovered the mosquito's role in transmitting the disease. The parasite was not simply lingering in air or water. It had an ally, a winged accomplice that fed silently at dusk. This revelation reshaped the entire landscape of healing. No longer was the battle just about treating the fever. It was about interrupting a cycle, breaking a chain between human and insect, parasite and host. Healing now meant draining swamps, building mosquito nets, redesigning villages, and understanding ecology itself. The road of healing widened into disciplines far beyond medicine, engineering, architecture, agriculture, governance. To heal, humanity had to reshape not only bodies, but environments. The age of science and medicine, with the discovery of quinine and later synthetic drugs like chloroquine, the 20th century ushered in a period of cautious optimism. Malaria, once considered an unshakable curse of the tropics, seemed for a time like it might be defeated entirely. Campaigns were launched across continents. In some places, success appeared dazzling. Entire regions of Europe, once plagued, declared themselves malaria-free. The United States, with its vast marshlands, once swarming with mosquitoes, proudly announced the eradication of malaria within its borders by the mid-20th century. These victories were not small. They were the result of enormous collective efforts, spraying DDT, distributing quinine, building drainage systems, expanding access to healthcare. For millions, these changes meant lives saved, children growing to adulthood, families spared from endless cycles of fever and death. But the road toward healing is long, and it is rarely without detours. Just when victory seemed near, malaria adapted. The parasite developed resistance to chloroquine and other drugs. The mosquitoes themselves grew resistant to insecticides. What once seemed like a straightforward march toward eradication became, instead, a grueling marathon, with the parasite revealing a cunning resilience that mirrored our own. Healing was no longer about one miracle cure, one silver bullet. It became a mosaic of strategies. New drugs, new nets, new policies, new hope, healing as a collective journey. Malaria has always revealed something profound about healing. It is not just an individual experience, but a collective one. No single person can heal from malaria without the broader web of protection, the medicine discovered by chemists, the nets distributed by health workers, the eradication programs funded by governments, the community cooperation that ensures standing. Water is cleared. Healing is woven from cooperation. A village where one family uses a mosquito net but others cannot afford one remains vulnerable. A nation where treatments are available only to the wealthy cannot hope to break the cycle of transmission. Malaria, in its cruel neutrality, exposes the fractures of inequality. It flourishes where poverty, neglect, and limited access to healthcare already leave people vulnerable. Thus, the road toward healing is not just medical, but social. It demands justice. It demands the recognition that no child should be left, fevered and trembling simply because of where they were born. Healing, in the case of malaria, is inseparable from the broader healing of societies themselves, the shadows that remain. Even with modern science, healing from malaria remains incomplete. Hundreds of thousands still die each year, most of them young children in sub-Saharan Africa. The parasite continues its hidden dance in bloodstreams. The mosquitoes continue their silent flights, and entire communities continue to live under the shadow of this ancient adversary. Healing here is not triumphant, it is weary. It is the grandmother who has lost 3 grandchildren to fever, yet still tends to the next sick child with quiet determination. It is the nurse in a rural clinic, who administers rapid diagnostic tests by candlelight when electricity fails. It is the researcher in a distant laboratory who spends decades studying proteins and immune responses, hoping to edge humanity closer to a vaccine. And yet, despite the shadows, healing also means persistence. Each life saved, each fever prevented, each village spared is a step on the road. The shadows are real, but they do not erase the light. The light of innovation in recent decades, hope has flickered brighter. Advances in genetic research, vaccine development, and global health coordination have offered new tools for the fight. The creation of the first malaria vaccines, though imperfect, marked a historic breakthrough. For the first time, the human body could be trained in advance to resist the parasite's invasion. These developments are not miracles that end the story overnight. They are fragile lights, requiring nurturing, funding, distribution, and trust. But they represent something essential, that the road toward healing is still alive, still moving forward. Humanity has not surrendered to the parasite's cunning. We continue to learn, to adapt, to seek. The metaphor of healing, to speak of the long road toward healing, is also to speak beyond malaria. It is to acknowledge that every human struggle against illness mirrors the broader journey of life itself. We all walk roads of healing, whether from physical disease, emotional wounds, or unseen burdens of the spirit. Like malaria, these struggles rarely vanish in a single act. They require persistence, community, patience, and the acceptance that healing is not a perfect erasure, but a gradual becoming. Healing is not just in laboratories or hospitals. It is in the quiet strength of those who refuse to give up. It is in the resilience of families who rebuild after loss. It is in the compassion of strangers who care for one another. It is in the recognition that to heal one person is, in some way, to heal us all. Toward the horizon. As we look to the horizon, the road of healing stretches onward. Malaria may one day be eradicated, or it may persist in new forms, teaching us again and again the necessity of vigilance. But even if complete eradication remains elusive, the journey itself transforms us. Each step taken, each life saved, each innovation achieved, each act of compassion offered, leaves humanity stronger, wiser, and more deeply connected. Healing is never finished. It is a road that continues long after we think we have reached the end. For every person who recovers, another begins the journey. For every generation that believes it has conquered, another must remember the lessons of endurance. And so the road bends on through swamps and laboratories, through fevered nights and hopeful mornings, through despair and resilience, through shadow and light. Healing, in the end, is not a destination. It is the road itself, and so, as our journey through time draws to its quiet end, we stand at the edge of history, looking back at the trail left by one of humanity's oldest enemies, from the silent swamps where the first parasite found a way, into warm blood, to the hidden dance within the body that turned survival into a battleground. Malaria has walked beside us. It has whispered through civilizations, shaping wars, changing empires, and reminding kings and peasants alike that power is fragile in the face of something so small, so ancient, so relentless. We have watched the battle of light and shadow unfold. Within us, the immune system fighting to preserve life while the parasite schemes to prolong its own. And we have traced the long road toward healing, seeing how science, courage, and resilience came together in humanity's attempt to break free from this invisible chain. But malaria is not a story of defeat or victory. It is a story of coexistence. A reminder that the tiniest of beings can leave the deepest of scars. That human progress is often written not just in discoveries and triumphs, but in blood, fever, and loss. And yet, it is also a story of hope. For every life lost, there are countless more saved by knowledge, by medicine, by the determination to refuse surrender. The struggle continues, but humanity is no longer powerless. What once was an eternal curse is now a challenge we are closer than ever to overcoming. As you close your eyes tonight, think of the swamps, the whispers, the long battles endured across generations. Think of how survival has always demanded both strength and humility. And remember, the story of malaria is not just the story of disease. It is the story of life itself, fragile, resilient, ever enduring. This has been malaria, humanity's oldest enemy, a tale of shadows and survival, a reminder of what it means to fight and what it means to endure. Good night.